It's my pleasure to introduce our next presenters, Professor Joanna Chorostowska and Yordan Aleksandrov. I've already introduced Professor Chorostowska, so I don't want to repeat myself, but Mr. Yordan Aleksandrov is an associate director at RPP Brussels, a Belgium-based public affairs consultancy firm, highly focused in the field of health policy. He has worked with Alpha-1 Global since 2017, when the Alpha-1 European Expert Group recommendations were developed. And then he also went on to help establish the EU Awareness Day and help with relations with members of the EU Parliament. So now we can move on to this discussion, and Dr. Chorostowska, you can kick us off.
Hello, everyone. I will start with my presentation. And actually, the way I want to shape this session is to really prove how very important patient engagement is. And also the Yordan's activity and Yordan's expertise in advocacy. So I will start with this document that we have published in 2017 as Alpha-1 European Expert Group recommendations. As you might see, we called for action at that time. It was 2017, and why we felt this document was very important at the time, because that was exactly the time when European reference networks were brought to life. And as per European Union community, the ERNs were expected to really share the expertise and provide the optimal treatment, optimal care for patients with rare diseases. As you can see, we called to coordinate EU policy, harmonize standards, and provide patients with the holistic care. And indeed, 24 ERNs were created throughout Europe. As you can see, this is the current status of the ERNs, 24 of them. And within that number, of course, the ERN lung, the network, clinical care network dedicated to patients with the rare respiratory diseases. And alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency is one of the groups within the ERN lung. This is the current status of the alpha-1 core group with both full and supporting partners. And importantly, as per the ERN design, from the very beginning, patients were expected to take a leading role within the structure of the ERN lungs. As you can see, the patients' advocacy groups were present as part of the steering committee, a board directing the activities of any ERN. That is also true for the ERN lung. And the patients' activities were supported in case of our network by URODIS, but also ELF. And I must say that the patient input and involvement was present in all activities of the network. And as you can see, also the groups representing the Alpha-1 community were present or active in the patient board of our network. And Karen O'Hara is a co-chair of the Alpha-1 group. Importantly, and I think in that Alpha-1 is unique, ERN lung is very closely linked to the ARCO. So therefore, we have two networks, the clinical networks, a network that is supposed to provide the clinical care and management for patients. But at the same time, many, if not all, centers involved in the ERN lung are also part of the ARCO, which is dedicated to the research. But as you can see, that it's quite visible when looking at the structure of the IARCO. And this is also visible when looking at the priorities of both IARCO and ERN Lung. And just to prove my point, this is one of the first publications coming from the IARCO clinical research collaboration. We looked at the research priorities of patients and healthcare providers. This is the structure of the survey. And you can appreciate that as many as almost 440 patients responded to the survey. And importantly, one of the major research areas identified by patients involved the education of the general practitioner, and also access to the reliable information. But importantly, one of the major research areas, or I would rather say needs of our patients, but also healthcare professionals, was the access to the Alpha-1 specialized centers. I think that really proves how important it is. And indeed, the European reference networks were created to provide this access, to serve as a research and knowledge centers that would treat patients from all EU countries and allow them allow the facilities to diagnose and treat those patients. So for that, the tools for diagnosis and treatment were developed. The online tools, because as you can see, the networks were supposed to provide, of course, provide the care for patients, but also provide the help to the doctors that work in the regions without facilities to manage patients with rare diseases. So was it successful? I would say partially only. So ERN Lung was able to develop online tools both for external consultation of patients. This is so-called EXABO Lung, Expert Advice Inquiry Tool, and also internal tools, so-called CPMS, that is open only to the expert centers working within the ERN Lung network. But we also developed a sort of algorithm to allow the cross-border care. We felt at the time that it's really important to elaborate and to work on the algorithm, very clear-cut algorithm with a three-level decision-making process that would clarify how the cross-border care would be delivered to the patient. So as you can see, it involved 11.1 of the that would allow the consultation of the local regional specialist with the expert center. Also the intra-ERN Lung network consultation. And if this proves inefficient, then we allow the cross-border referral of the patient to the outside center. We believe that was quite self-explanatory process, a process that would really allow very efficient consultation within the given country, but also international. And that process also followed the directive of the European Parliament and the European Council, the directive published in 2011. And I just brought here the specific wording. I think this is important to show you the wording. Because under this EU scheme, patient has the right to get medical treatment, both diagnostic and pharmacological treatment in any EU country. And also this directive says that the prescriptions are recognized anywhere in the European Union, and the national contact points are expected to provide the patient information about his or her rights to be cared or managed abroad. So did ERN Lung or any ERN help in implementation of this directive? Well, as I said, yes and no. So we managed to build a structure, pan-European structure, which I think is a very positive outcome. However, there are many legal and financial barriers that prevent that structure to be really active and be active both in terms of the national healthcare system, but also a pan-European management of the patients with rare diseases. In other words, the structure of the specialized networks was created, but was not supported neither by funds or legal changes in the European law. And I think this has been very clearly shown by the recent report from the Eurodis. And as you can see, the title of this report is quite self-explanatory: An Empty Promise, Accessing Cross-Border Healthcare for People Living with Rare Diseases. I think this is quite crushing for the specialists, but it also shows that European reference network was brought to life, but was left empty-handed. Just few glimpses or few snapshots from this report. As you can see, as many as almost 90% of responders, people with rare diseases, claim they would travel to receive medical treatment. I think this is very important. However, they also mentioned that the directive was not really implemented properly, and patients were left with all kinds of burdens: administrative, financial, and emotional burden of being unable to get the proper treatment, also in a cross-border setting. In terms of the ERN activity, you can really say I emphasized it in red that Eurodis says that networks were unable to deliver high quality, accessible, and cost-effective healthcare for all rare diseases. But of course, as I said, the networks were created by really outside of online tools. We were unable to really function properly. I can just give you an example of my center. We did not get any additional funding, although we are one of the key ERN centers in the country within all 24 ERN networks. And so it was not really possible to create any additional system of patients management outside of what we have within the regular healthcare reimbursement in Poland. And and I would like to finish with just providing you with some, not all, but some of the conclusions or recommendations coming from the Eurodis. And so they recommend to improve the process of accessing healthcare in another country, in other words, the cross-border care, with emphasis on the information, because this survey proved that patients felt not to be adequately informed about how to access the care in another country. They also call for establishing the clear mechanisms, both at the national and European level, that would allow patients to get the care in another country. They also called for specific solutions for advanced therapies in rare disease. We all understand that those therapies are expensive, but nevertheless, it has to be discussed at the European level. And this is something that this report really emphasized very strongly. And also they called for giving the ERNs a legal mandate to really work as a proper specialized, highly specialized networks to properly deliver the management to the patients, also in terms of the cross-border healthcare. As I said, the report and the Yordan's recommendations emphasize that ERNs were not effective because they were not properly integrated into the national healthcare systems, were not provided with additional funds to ensure the proper management of patients with rare diseases. And also the model was not really fully coordinated within in between the European countries. So in other words, the Eurodis calls for discussion at the European level, at the discussion that would actually better define the basket of cross-border healthcare services provided to the patients with rare diseases. It's fully understandable that different countries have different economical context also of the healthcare. Nevertheless, it was felt, and I also feel this is the way to go forward. We have to discuss this issue at the European level to understand the differences, to understand the inequalities, and to find a solution for the patients with their diseases. Otherwise, the ERNs would function, yes, but they would not develop properly and would not be able to provide a better care for patients with rare diseases, and this number for patients with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. So I would like to finish with this slide. In 2017, we called to changing the way we think about alpha-1. Nowadays, I believe we need to change the way we care for alphas. And as in 2017, it's still time to act. Thank you very much. This is it from me. So now, Yordan, I would like to hear your thoughts about how could we advocate in a most efficient way to really make sure that the situation is changed and the ERNs could work for the patient's benefit.
Thank you, Professor Chorostowska. And first I wanted to thank as well Alpha-1 Global for inviting me and providing me with this opportunity to present the Alpha-1 advocacy pathway. Actually, my presentation was initially structured into two sections: an introduction section on the crucial part of advocacy and patient involvement in policy. But I'm very happy that you spoke so extensively about the cross-border healthcare directive and the European reference networks, which I find that the European reference network particularly is a great example of effective advocacy, because before the legal basis for them was put in the cross-border healthcare directive, the rare disease patient community was quite active. And they managed to create the European reference networks. Now, it's a completely different question, the fact that they haven't lived up to the challenge, but hopefully with the upcoming revision of the cross-border healthcare directive and the evaluation of the European reference networks, this would change. But of course, conscious of time, I will probably just skip this introductory part and I'll directly go to the presentation of the Alpha-1 advocacy pathway. And this is a tool improved over the course of the last few months and dedicated specifically for Alpha-1 members and anyone who would like to become an Alpha-1 advocate. It provides the needed guidance on several advocacy activities, which we felt are the most common and of course the most effective ones. So can we directly go to slide 5? Next. Yeah, there. Great, thank you very much. So the purpose of the pathway is not only to explain what advocacy is, but also what steps to take to effectively start the process. The pathway sets out these steps and guides the reader through them and provides information to assist the reader in developing their own activities. Being at the international level, advocating for more exchange of information and knowledge capacity, or at national level, advocating for treatment and reimbursement options. With your action and initiatives, you will be able to really showcase the value of improved policies for the patient community. And this is really the essence of the pathway. It is a pathway structured in 5 sections, which are all equally important when it comes to advocacy, being with policymakers, but also funding partners and broader stakeholders. So these sections are self-advocacy, social media community, policy, and of course, organization. And in the next few minutes, I'll just go into these sections a bit more in detail. Next slide. Thank you. So the first part of the pathway is self-advocacy, and self-advocacy is really the ability to speak and act on your own or loved one's behalf. And I just heard from one of the previous speakers, Dan, how he was speaking quite regularly with alphas. I think this is a great example of how everyone can be an effective alpha 1 advocate. In this particular section focuses on alpha 1 basic education, providing information about the condition in order for the advocate to be active participant in making healthcare decisions. It also gives information about physician communications, what type of questions you need to ask your doctor so that he understands your healthcare needs. A certain wellness practice examples, how to find support and connect with other alpha 1 patients, and the importance, of course, of joining a registry. This is something which was also emphasized by some of the previous speakers. And most importantly, the section focuses on how to tell your story and how to tell your story in your own way, because this can have a really remarkable effect, not just for you, but also for alphas and policymakers. And in the pathway, you find useful information on things to emphasize, things to avoid, and all information and activities on telling your story, which Alpha 1 Global has developed over the years. Next slide. The second section provides guidance on social media engagement. And social media is something which can bring tremendous awareness about the condition, about what you're doing, and what you would like to achieve. For example, Professor Chorostowska was mentioning that the cross-border healthcare directive is going to be revised, and that European reference networks would be evaluated. Well, these type of tools, social media tools, and developing your own messages, tailoring them to the right policymakers would be very, very effective once these files are essentially on the table, and would provide you with a platform where you would be able to also coordinate your activities with umbrella groups like Alpha 1 Global, and help the community to advance and improve your needs in these particular legislations. So this form of advocacy takes the least amount of time and can be very, very effective and far-reaching. For example, a message retweeted by a politician or a celebrity can reach out to thousands of people. And the good thing about it is that it can also be done from the comforts of your home. So here in this section, you'll find tips on how to choose the social media platform. If you're good with photography, for example, maybe Instagram is the right platform for you. And if you have a lot of followers on Twitter and Facebook, perhaps this is a platform which you can explore a bit more. So you find guidance on all of this in this section. Next slide. The third section focuses on community advocacy, and here Alpha 1 Global have gathered information for advocates who would like to be publicly visible, who would like to organize and participate in events and speak before small and large groups. The guidance here focuses on a certain amount of planning, and we hope the explanation of the planning process and the steps provided in this section would serve the F1 community well. How to organize events, what to focus on, how to engage with fundraising activities, how to outreach and be active with media, press, TVs. All of these things are explained in this section. Next slide. The next section is about policy and legislative advocacy. And this part of the pathway deals with interactions with policymakers and legislative processes. A policy advocate essentially informs policymakers and interacts with legislative processes. Legislators and regulators are often not adequately informed about issues surrounding the F1 patient community. And here we can read about how to establish your advocacy goals, how to establish your strategy, how to understand your policy audience, and analyze a particular policy situation. Overall, it's a tricky process from building your message to delivering it effectively to policymakers. But we're convinced that patients would have a good start with the pathway, and of course, F1 Global are always there to provide as much assistance as needed. Next slide. And the last section of the pathway provides a really practical and engaging information on how to set up your own patient organization and what are the things to consider should you want to do so. It consists of guidance on starting a group, organizing fundraising activities, approaching funders, building your mission statement, this type of things. And once this is done, there are also some practical tips on approaching and starting political relationships with decision makers. So this is it. These are the main sections of the pathway. We have tried to build it in the most optimal, user-friendly way, where you can have direct and easy access to all relevant information. It's important to know that you're not alone in this, and as much as the pathway provides a training and guiding platform, F1 Global is always there for patients who need further guidance or have just certain advocacy ideas they would like to discuss. So this platform is finalized. We're just figuring out some small technical things before making it available online. And this will happen in the coming weeks. Thank you very much. I think I'm right at 8 o'clock.
Yes, 8 o'clock, 2 o'clock Eastern time.
Can I comment on what Yordan said? Because I think this is of extreme importance. I don't want to sound overly cynical, but do remember that it's the politicians who make the decisions. It's the politicians who allocate the budgets. And you are actually within the voting rights. So they probably would rather listen to you than to the experts. Therefore, absolutely. I do believe that patient engagement and advocacy here in this specific case is of particular importance. And I think what's on the positive side and what really empowers us as a community is that in this case, both experts and patients work together. So I'm very hopeful indeed. I'm very hopeful indeed. And I would like to congratulate you on this tool, because this is quite helpful and hopefully will prove very productive. And we need to make sure that we will use all potential resources to fight for properly developed network of specialized centers in Europe, and not to leave it to a chance as it is now.
Yes, absolutely. And I do encourage, once this is published, I do encourage everyone to have a read at it. It doesn't take long to read all sections, and of course engage with the F1, with the EU F1 Awareness Day. Engage with your local politicians, with your particularly in Europe, with your members of European Parliament. They will absolutely listen to you, and their doors are open. The only thing which we encourage you to do is just knock, and we hope that the pathway will help you in this.
Yes, and I would like to finish with a positive message. So, just make sure that there is a positive message at the end. So I can see that patients are really engaged here, and I think I can speak on behalf of the European respiratory community in terms of, because I am current Secretary General of the European Respiratory Society. So I'm really happy to say that this aspect, the future of European reference networks, and of course mostly ERN lung, is of utmost importance for ERS as well, and we are actively working to ensure that the ERN lung receives the approval from the European Union, and not only approval but also a better budget. This is important, and this is why I'm saying that having you on our side as a patient's well-organized patient community is really important. And so please do liaise with ELF. They are working actively to really ensure the better future for the ERNs as well. Thank you.